Yes, well, hello everybody. As I was introduced, my name is Hanna Fakoornejad. I'm the tutoring services manager at Tri-County, and I'm joined by my colleague Tabitha Johnson, who is a public services librarian at Tri-County Technical College. And Tri-County is a 2-year community college in the upstate of South Carolina. And the department that Tabitha and I both work in is a learning commons. So we're really excited to be here today to share details about our practice context with you all and also to learn from you as well. And so let's jump into our agenda for today. We're going to start off with our framework, communities of practice, and then we'll move into what our department, the Learning Commons, is and how we think of it as a community of practice. After that, we're going to establish, after we establish this foundation, we're going to discuss more specifically the relationship between writing tutor and librarian and how we work together to support our students here at Tri-County. And then at the end, we really want to hear from you all and what your thoughts are on this topic. So we'll have a discussion towards the end. But first, we're going to learn more about communities of practice.
Yes, and if this terminology looks familiar to you guys, it is the theme of the conference that we're all attending today. That is not just a coincidence. We really think that this framework identifies and speaks to the relationship that we have here in the Learning Commons and is really representative of what we've been seeing and the relationship we hope to further cultivate. So this is a concept that was coined by Wengers and his folks in their book, Cultivating Communities of Practice, A Guide to Managing Knowledge. They really came at it from a business context, but they defined it as a group of people who share a concern, a set of problems, or a passion about a topic, and who deepen their knowledge and expertise in this area by interacting on an ongoing basis. Like I said, they had a business construct in mind, but they talked about how applicable this is to other organizations, other groups. And it's also not a new concept. You can trace the communities of practice all the way back to prehistoric Paleolithic times when people lived in caves and spent a lot of time sharpening their arrowheads and figuring out how to hunt and stalk their prey, figuring out what berries were safe to eat and which ones would either kill you or make you feel really terrible. We could see it in ancient Rome with trade corporations, and those really served both a business and a social purpose. So they would worship together, they would worship their deities, they would celebrate their holidays, and they would also conduct their business all in the same spaces and in the same interactions. We again see it in medieval ages with guilds and various apprenticeships, and even today with trade organizations and us. We think that we see this every day here in the Learning Commons as well.
So historically speaking, the Learning Commons at Tri-County came into being in 2017 when our Student Success Center was built. And before that, the Tutoring Center and Library were two separate entities. And since these two departments have the people and spaces and resources to support students and provide a learning environment that promotes critical thinking, it makes sense that we should integrate and join our people, spaces, and services together. And so that's what we did. And we've worked to establish our identity over the last few years. And before we talk about how we're exploring the relationship between writing tutors and librarians, we want to run through the foundations of the Learning Commons services, what we call our pillars of the support that we provide students outside of the classroom. So first up is our academic support. And this exists in both in-person and online formats. Our tutoring program is certified through the College Reading and Learning Association. And most of our tutors are professional tutors, meaning they have advanced degrees. Some are retired teachers, or some are working on their PhDs over at Clemson University right now. And so one of the reasons we have professional tutors primarily is because by the time one of our students at a 2-year institution is qualified to tutor in our courses, they're transferring to either a 4-year institution or they're entering the workforce. So of course we have our content specific tutoring support in areas as nursing and math and chemistry, biology, etc. And then we have writing tutors who help with every facet of the writing process, from organization to ideas, to constructing a thesis statement, to creating citations. But then we also do have that peer support as well through our partnership with Clemson called Supplemental Instruction, SI. And this support is primarily for the high drop-fail withdrawal courses such as calculus and chemistry. And basically, a student who is an undergraduate student at Clemson, they've taken the courses already and they've received an A in the courses, and they're coming back to Tri-County to take the courses again alongside the students. And what they're doing is they're hosting exam reviews and group study sessions every week for these courses. So we have academic support in both like professional and peer capacity. We also have academic coaching and recovery. So we work with several different programs, as in the health education, business, and engineering, where if students who are considered at risk of dropping out, they'll meet with our learning strategist. And the learning strategist really helps with study skills and strategies for student success, as well as time management techniques, really trying to find those pockets of time where students can maximize their learning. And most importantly, academic coaching helps students learn how to learn so that they can apply these skills across their courses and also to their lives as well. And students, they tend to treat our learning strategist like an accountability partner, where they'll meet with her regularly just to make sure that they're staying on top of their coursework.
Thanks, Hannah. So another service that we offer in the Learning Commons are skill shops. And a lot of our instruction, when we're either in the Learning Commons or in classrooms, it boils down to one-shot instruction. I know a lot of folks here can relate to that. So we have a limited amount of time to teach them very specific skills or help them cultivate those skills that they'll need to do for assignments, for further research projects. So skill shops give us an opportunity to expand on those kind of lessons that we can provide. These are low stakes, low key sessions that help students take control of their own learning process and help us explore not just what we learn, but how we learn and why any of that matters to us. These skill shops leverage cognitive science research and best practices from critical literacy to help improve students' own ability to become more effective, more efficient, and self-empowered learners. And they offer students tangible and accessible techniques, so something they can take away with them right away, they can adopt and apply to their own research, to their own life skills. Our goal is to promote these student understandings as applicable across all the disciplines, not just one class. So if they're taking an English class, we want them to see that they can apply it both to that and even to their astronomy classes or their history classes, that this can translate among the different disciplines. And we want them to know that it's relevant to them as lifelong learners. So not just here, but something they can take away with them once they've left TCTC as well. So we make these available both in person and virtually, usually on a weekly basis, kind of one on one day and one on the other. We provide a select set of recordings of some of these, but usually the skill shops themselves will be live virtual content so that it can be very interactive. But we do know that not everyone can attend, so there are some that are available on our website. We also have mini skill shops, PSA and how-to videos, quick little video shorts for how to navigate Primo or our databases, so our collection management tool, or any of the things that we have on our website. We started to cultivate a lot more of these, of course, when we entered into the pandemic, and we've all heard the term pivot. We had to move away from our traditional mode of instruction to provide content that was accessible to students, whether they could be here in person or whether they were at home or at the local Starbucks or something, trying to access content with a Wi-Fi connection that they couldn't physically gather from us here. So we started to make that more available, and we've continued that process because we think it's popular. We think it's been accessible to students to have multiple modes of access. And we want to make sure that we can meet them at their point of need, regardless of where they are, when they are, or how they need it. So just to give you a little bit of an example of what this looks like, here is one of our schedules from the spring 2022 workshop and skill shop and makerspace schedules. We've got a new one coming up for the fall, but we wanted to give you a breakdown kind of what our students are seeing. So if you see the light purple color, those are our actual skill shops, and then the green are our makerspace events. The skill shops promote everything from time management and learning strategies like that to presentation skills or how to manage final exams. We usually stagger these throughout the semester so that they are not only useful overall, but very relevant to what the student is working on at the time. So time management, we're at the beginning of the semester, we're just getting started. They need to know how to navigate the procrastination that's going to be very tempting. Physiology of the learning brain helps them evaluate ways that their real world, like the things they're doing in their life, impact their learning. When I attended this, I learned a lot about how our sleep schedules, about how our hydration affect the way that we operate and the way that we learn. So we hope that they can take something meaningful away from that. And then if you go further down, you see perils of plagiarism, presentation makeovers. We have put those right around the time that the major assignments are going to be due, either as papers or as big group presentations. And we hope that those will be useful to students as they're navigating that. Another thing that's always available to the students throughout the entire semester is consultations with research librarians, myself and some of my colleagues over on the library half of things. This is something that often involves sitting down with the student and going over the assignment with them, exploring what it is they're being asked to do. So they have been given an assignment. What's the task they have to accomplish by the end of it? What are the questions that need to be answered? What kind of sources need to be used? And we can help them either cultivate a thesis if they have no idea where to start, or we can help guide them towards credible scholarly resources, or ones that are applicable to their assignment if they already have an idea and they need to know how to support it. And then, of course, we can help them figure out why that matters. Why does it matter if it's a scholarly resource? So this isn't just about doing it for them. It's helping them understand the information ecosystem overall. Why does it matter where they go to get their information? Why can they find something in one place and not the other? We're trying to help them cultivate that critical inquiry and question the information that they're gathering. This is both for their assignments, so they know how they can apply that to get a good grade, and also when they're away from Tri-County, when they're away from their classes and they're just looking at things online, it gives them an idea of how to actually navigate all of that for themselves and not get caught up in a trap of misinformation or just down a rabbit hole that isn't helpful. So this is about instilling those research strategies and supporting the things that they already know, empowering them to learn more. It's the teach someone to fish or give them a fish situation, but we like to do both. We like to give them a fish in the moment if that's helpful to them, but also teach them how to fish so they can feed themselves and they can continue to be successful both in academia and going forward. Another way that we're able to connect with students is through our embedding program. We know that embedding can mean different things to different people in different organizations. So just a snapshot of what that is for us. Myself, Hanna, and often some of the tutors are invited into the Blackboard course shells, and we are able to see everything that the teacher and the student can see. So it gives us a special privilege to actually see what's going on inside of the course. This is great for a multitude of reasons. We can see the students that are in there and have direct line of communication to them. We can also see what the assignments are, what the assignment details are. That's really helpful if it can kind of cut us ahead of that reference interaction of what it is they need to do, and we can not get lost in some of that tangle. We can see exactly what it is. We can also see when it's due, and that lets me send out targeted messaging that's helpful for a variety of reasons. I can cater it and target it towards what the assignment is, what resources we have that are going to be really useful to them as they're working on that, and also the resources that we have that can help them beyond just databases and research guides, but us here. It's a good way to connect them to your assignments due in a week. Now's a good time to talk with me if you need some research help. Now's a great time to talk to a tutor. If they're writing a paper, I tell them, hey, here's a good day to get your paper into a writing tutor by, so they can help look over it with you. We got to make sure that we're staying on task and getting there in time because it's first come, first serve, limited availability, but it lets me get them a straight message at the time when they're actually going to need it and hope that they grab onto it like a lifeline and come and make use of the services. Another way that they can reach us, if we, beyond like just responding to the ways that I send out to them, in all of the Blackboard shells that I'm embedded into, we have a chat box that's put in there. It's the same chat box that's the floating widget on our website that follows them wherever they go. It's just kind of a shortcut to get them to it. And when it is on our website, it'll pop up on all of our pages. So we'll often be able to see, did they come to us from a database? Did they come to us from a research guide? Were they looking at the tutoring page and they want to know how to get in touch with the tutor? We can see all of that, and it's really useful information. This helps us answer reference questions when they need them virtually, or set up appointments if we need to. And it also is a great way to route to the tutoring services as well. So If someone sends a chat message, how do I get help with math? I'm sending them to a tutor. How do I get someone to look at my writing? How do I have someone review that? We're connecting them with a tutor. So it's just a great shortcut over to them for that as well. So this is the why we do what we do and what services we provide we've already covered, but let's look at the resources that we actually have in our space and online. One of them is the Learning Commons itself. This is a big floor. We're the top floor of the Student Success Center for us, and it's a big open space, lots of natural light, lots of comfortable seating, places that students can congregate and do their studies, hang out, relax, be productive. If you see in the top right-hand corner, the little red square built into the wall, those are very popular. They're called the red cubbies. I think one of my first sessions with a class, someone asked me, what are they actually called? And I tried to dig into that, and they are actually called the red cubbies. They're very popular with the students, and that can be a place where they can sit individually if they'd like to, but you can often see people sitting in there together as well. We have collaborative study rooms. I'm actually in one right now. These have screens set up so that you can project your assignments, have Zoom meetings, do practice with your groups. They're designed for groups, so usually up to about 5 people, but individuals can use them as well if they want a space that's not quite as open. We have several of these tutoring ones for these as well, and we have 2 large collaborative classrooms that have that same kind of technology that really facilitates presentation and group work. Our tables are kind of set up in one of them to lead you to a group setup, so you don't have to like split them off. They're already kind of sectioned into group format. And there's screens in that one all the way around the room, so no one has to adjust what they're doing to be able to see the presentation or to be able to talk about what it is that they're showing us. We have another one that's the much more comfortable, like there's couches in the corner and we do a lot in there. It's a great getaway for us to get some work done, but it also has computers all the way around the room too. So it's another space that people can use there. We have computers for students and for the public over on the library half of things, free Wi-Fi, of course, and just all sorts of resources that are available to them in this space. Something that's not pictured here, but is a really cool aspect is we have a makerspace. So I mentioned before, we have the makerspace events in that schedule. We have a few of those throughout every semester. We're still looking at ways to capitalize and enhance the student success element of that space to really promote it to them in a way that is relevant to their co-curricular elements. Right now, it's a fun, engaging space where they can come if they want to explore large format printing, 3D printing, if they want to just build with Legos or Connects. We have a lot of tactile things that we think help with background processing when they just need a brain break so they can get back to what they're doing with a fresh set of eyes. Coloring, just all sorts of things in there that they can just sit down and do something else other than stare at their textbook for an hour. But it's another space that's very open. You can see it from anywhere in the Learning Commons. So one thing that you will notice if you come into the Learning Commons is that we don't have the traditional library setup with books everywhere. That helps make it possible for it to be such an open, airy space. That doesn't mean though that we have fewer items. We do have thousands of physical materials. We just keep them in something called the BookBot, which is basically a 3-story dumbwaiter. I call it a robot. It is not, but when I introduce, I'm like, here's the robot. It has about like thousands and thousands of physical items, makerspace tools, all sorts of extra things that are in there, and they are easily accessible. So it's not, if they're in there, they're cut off from students. They're able to see all of that content through Primo, which is our collection management tool. And that shows them both what's on the floor. And we have a few things that are relevant both to popular assignments, some popular reading, new materials, but mostly it'll be routing them to the things that are in the BookBot if it's a physical item. That's also how they can see our multitude of digital items that are housed in our various databases. They can see that from our A to Z list as well, but the Primo will pull kind of all of it into one space so they can just see what's out there. They can type a singular word and get millions of results and see what we do have for them. If for some reason we don't have access to it, they do have the option to get it from elsewhere. For those of you who may not be zooming in from South Carolina, that we have a consortium called Pascal, which is Partnership Across South Carolina Academic Libraries. This lets us expand our collection. So if we don't have something, we can get it from one of our partners very quickly. It's usually just a couple of days turnaround. And so that makes it that the students have a lot more access to materials than if they were just physically here. Because we don't have as many popular reading items as some folks might have, since we do prioritize our curricular elements. So if they just want to read the notebook for whatever reason, we might be able to get it from another library and bring it in. We also are very keen on the element of it being freely available to students. So we're exploring OER a lot more recently, the open educational resources, trying to foster affordable learning as much as we can. We're exploring a couple of different avenues to make this more widely accessible on our campus and to our student community. One way that we've done this is partnering in with SCALE, which again, if you're not in South Carolina, is South Carolina Academic Learning. We're also really excited about potential partnership prospects for OER. So Clemson University, who's local to us and also partnered through us with our Bridge program for transfer students, they're currently working on a template for OER creation that would make it possible for you to create your own. We don't have a lot of information about that right now. We're just kind of keeping our eye on it because we think it's another great way we'll be able to partner our institutions together and in a way that is really beneficial to the students. So we just wanted to show you that each of these pillars represents service and philosophy that make up the heart of what we do here in the Learning Commons, and each one contributes to that foundation of co-curricular learning that we hope to provide to our students. All right, so that's all of that to serve as a backdrop to the collaboration that we have going on, because this is not just a library or a tutoring space in one space. It is one space altogether. We are a shared entity. We like to promote ourselves as a dual entity, and all of these make us up as one body. So we have all of these services integrated together to enhance the students' experience and set them up for success. This was always the mission, straight from the start, but we have noticed in recent months, as we've been looking at it more intentionally, this specific symbiotic relationship developing between librarians and writing tutors. So we decided we're really curious about this. We wanted to investigate it in a meaningful way. So we started trying to collect measurable data to assess the impacts of this partnership on our student body. And it became very clear as we were doing more research, digging deeper into this idea that it's not a new concept and that others were already noting the importance of this collaboration. Some literature that already validates this significant partnership is that from Elmborg and Hook, in their book, Centers for Learning, Writing Centers and Libraries in Collaboration. This was a compilation of different case studies. It's actually a much older text. This is from 2005. And so of course we tell our students to be mindful of the age of the materials that they're using. But we found that this still reflects the key points in our own community practice. They noted that when writing tutors and librarians collaborate, we're able to provide students with enhanced constructive processes that facilitate deeper understanding. And some of the ways that we do this, some of the ways this demonstrates itself is that we both deal with real world, time-sensitive problems, the high volume of students. So the tutors are seeing a lot of people, the librarians are seeing a lot of people, and we're often dealing with very similar questions, very similar concerns. We both serve on the front lines of technology in virtual classrooms, physical classroom spaces. In spaces like this, we're trying to make things more accessible to our students. The tutors often meet through Zoom if they need to. We'll often meet through Teams or Zooms or Blackboard Collaborate if we need to meet with the student. And we both understand that writing and research are like this. They go hand in hand. It's really not feasible or realistic to have one without the other. So we understand that if you look at both of them as a shared process, it can help you have a deeper understanding of both of them. And lastly, but not least, we both help students reflect on their work and develop critical competencies that they need to complete both their assignments successfully and to navigate media, social media, internet in general, the world outside of this in interactions that they have with people once they've left college. We're trying to facilitate those skills in them on both fronts.
And here's how it has progressed. We want to talk about how it's progressed for a second. So I mentioned toward the beginning that historically the tutoring center and library existed in silos. So there weren't really opportunities for writing tutors and librarians to form those partnerships. But in 2017, when we integrated in becoming one department, we started to see this natural connection starting to happen, which really has been strengthened over time. So currently, we're wanting to be more intentional in thinking about the potentials of the relationship between writing tutors and librarians and how we can better serve our students. We have practices that are currently established. So one action that naturally started happening when we merged into the same space is having this sort of in-person referral system. For example, if a student is working with a writing tutor on reviewing a paper and the writing tutor thinks that they could benefit from a research consultation, they will literally walk the student over to a librarian's desk, and vice versa. If the librarian is working with a student on finding a topic or implementing a peer-reviewed journal article and feels like the student is really in need of writing assistance, then they'll walk the student over to the tutoring front desk. So it is the benefit of having the same space. Another is embedded support. Tabitha's already mentioned this, but she is embedded in most of the English classes. And just as an example, when it's time for a paper's due date, she's not only reminding the students of how she can help them as a librarian with research, she's also reminding them how writing tutors can help them as well. So the messaging for all of the services are coming from the same person. Another is new employee connections. So when a writing tutor, for example, is onboarded as a new employee, we really try to set aside times where they can meet with the librarians just to start building rapport, since we know that they'll be working together in this mutual way. And same for librarians, we really want to introduce them to the writing tutor so that they can start building that connection, since we'll be working together in order to promote our student success. We also have partner presentations, much like this one, where, I'm technically tutoring staff and Tabitha is a librarian, but if I wasn't here, then Tabitha could talk about tutoring services just as I would. And if Tabitha wasn't here, I could talk about library services, because really, like, in the end, it's all learning common services. So this also plays out in resource fairs or any kind of tabling event, where we are describing all the ways that we can support students, not just in our areas of expertise. And speaking of areas of expertise, another thing we really like to do is to leverage each other's skill sets. So for example, I recently was working on a project for work that required a lot of research, and Tabitha literally came into my office with a huge stack of articles that she found on my topic. So it was very, very helpful in that way, because that is her area of expertise, and vice versa. My background is in writing. I used to be a writing tutor. So if Tabitha, she'll come to me if she needs help with, citing something in APA format or something like that. So those are just some ways that we see the connection between librarian and writing tutor playing out in our learning commons currently.
So we knew we were onto something. We knew there was something that had been developing and emerging out of this partnership, and we really wanted to look at it closer. This did not come without some challenges. Those of you who are familiar with SpringShare, Ref Analytics, and LibAnswers, that's often how we librarians track our information. We have an interaction with a student, we pop our quick little summary of what it was and capture the data of the interaction itself, not so much who it was with. It's more anonymous. So we wanted to have an idea of, if a student meets with us and with a writing tutor, how can that be beneficial to them? Are we seeing that successfully displayed in their academic journey? Are they having higher grades or a higher retention rate? Are they making it further into the program? And this is easier to track with Starfish, which is the program that the tutors have used that tracks them by the student ID. So if you put we call it the T number, into it with a summary of what occurred, that's always there as a visible record of who the student was, when they met with who, and what the outcome was. We thought it'd be a great idea to start capitalizing on a feature we saw in that, which was an option to include research consultations. We noticed this because we already do these things called campus engagements that happen through the college skills program, where they have to come and meet with someone in a support space on campus and kind of document that experience so that their teachers can see it and give them credit. So we were in there, we just weren't using it in the same way because it wasn't what we were used to using for tracking our data. So we thought maybe it'd be a good idea to start logging these research consultations into Starfish as well. This meant that we had to retrain librarians on a way that we had been doing things kind of automatically all along. We were not familiar with this platform beyond our quick campus engagement entry, and we were very much used to on autopilot. We've had this interaction with a student, it goes into Ref Analytics, and then we keep going on about our business. So we've had a lot of meetings about this even recently to try to figure out where we would put what. Do we put it in one place? Do we put it in the other? What are we capturing? Are we putting T numbers in ref analytics, which we decided against for anonymity's sake of the student? And also, what exactly are we retaining and what's the purpose of it? So we've settled on for now, I think we've settled on for now that we're going to have a small, very quick entry into ref analytics so we can still track that transaction for our data collection purposes. But then we put a more detailed report into Starfish with a T number. This came with its own potential challenge because, again, a lot of this had been happening automatically. We've been having reference interactions with students. We've been logging them. We were very used to just, how's it going? Have our reference interaction, our questions that we had to get through with the student, our conversation to get them to their need, to help them through the ask that they were trying to accomplish. That didn't mean that meant we weren't always capturing who they were beyond the conversational element. So if we're saying hello and we know their name, that's great, but we weren't saying, what's your T number? A way that we decided to work around this that's been pretty useful so far is to highlight the benefit to the student of us having that information in Starfish. So we've tried to more organically plug in, hey, do you mind if I pop your T number into Starfish and we take a record of this so your teacher can see that we met, they can see what we talked about, and they can see what the outcome of that was. And that's been pretty useful. That's been a way that students feel comfortable giving us that information. We aren't always able to organically capture it in a way that doesn't feel kind of forced. So some of them do slip through the cracks, but we're able to get a lot of them that way, especially when we're setting up an appointment. Just, hey, what's your T number? Plugging it in. It's usually not an issue at all, but we do make sure that the student is comfortable with that occurring. So that's been a thing that's developing to make it a little more feasible for us to actually track this data in a measurable way.
So the reason why we're tracking the data, what we're interested in looking at is, all right, what do student success rates look like who use both writing tutoring and library services versus maybe students who use one or the other or none at all? So we started this new data collection process mid-semester in the spring, and I was able to pull out the students who use both writing tutoring and library services for the same class. And then I looked at their final grade, and although it was a very small sample size, we found that 100% of the students who use both services passed their class with an A or a B. So that's what we're kind of interested in learning about more. So some of our next steps in exploring these ideas is to, one, continue to improve our record keeping between librarians and writing tutors, because we really need and want to be consistent in capturing the accurate student data. Number two, we want to work with our institutional research department to develop some research questions regarding student success rates of students who use both services versus those who don't. And they'll be able to conduct the wide scale studies that we wouldn't be able to in-house. So that's a really important resource for us to tap into. And three, we really wanted to gather feedback from various learning center professionals and librarians. We actually presented this at the Southeastern Learning Center Association conference back in June, and we were able to capture some thoughts from learning center staff. So today, importantly, we want to capture thoughts from you all as well. So we're really asking you to reflect on your own practice context and determine how what Tabitha and I have been talking about today relates to your context, or how it might be challenging.
At this point, we do want to open it up for discussion. We had envisioned this as a little bit of a think, pair, share activity, but we decided it was probably easier not to try and break us all off into groups right here at the end of the time. So we'd like you to just take a few moments and then put into the chat, or you're free to unmute yourself. We'd be very happy to have a lively discussion. A couple of questions. So firstly, what does a community of practice look like for your position? If you can think of one that exists, even if it's a lot different from what ours looks like, what is that for you? Second, what barriers or challenges exist that would make it difficult to achieve a community of practice in your institution? We are very fortunate. We had an institution that combined us already as a vision. So we were able to really capitalize on that, but we know not everyone has that ability. Not everyone has those resources available to them. So if there are barriers you can think of that would make something like this difficult, how might you overcome such challenges with what is available to you? So are there ways you can partner with people, even if they're not even in the same building, if they're on other sides of the campus? How can you go about that? So take a few moments, think it through, and then let's talk about it. And if you have any regular questions you want to pop in at this time, that's great too. So I see one that has come in from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Linnea. For us, faculty run 2 centers, which are in completely different parts of the library. We in research help have staff status, and it's hard to connect with the busy faculty in other centers. Also hard to get students to see what we do as similar to what they do. So one of the things that we talked about with the Learning Center professionals that we were meeting with at the last conference, they had kind of a similar setup. They felt very siloed from one service to the other. And something that we were able to kind of talk through together was maybe you can introduce trainings or just lines of communication. So if you have these professionals who are helping in these different ways, let's get them in a room. If we can't get them in a room, let's get them in an email chain or a Zoom call or something and introduce ourselves to one another, introduce our services, maybe some kind of training. Like when I started here, I was brought in, I was introduced to everyone in the Learning Commons and also talked to about what the services are. So maybe we can have new folks come in and meet the librarians, meet the tutors, think about how they can connect with one another. Hanna, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I guess the question I would have is, do the people who are outside of your department, because you're saying that it's hard to connect with like the busy faculty and that the research help have the staff status. Are there certain meetings that you could attend where you could share some of your expertise or ask questions about how you could support them and vice versa? Maybe attending certain meetings if people have established meetings in order might be an idea for that. I know that at the beginning of the semesters, typically our Learning Commons staff or faculty will attend different people's before the fall start meetings so that we can talk with them about our services and just create that baseline rapport before we get into the busyness of the semester. Anybody else? Okay, so if you have covered this already, apologies. How does your shared space process ELL, ESL learners? Do you find that there are positive effects? Do you have dedicated tutors, librarians that address ELL/ESL learners? It is very interesting that you would bring this up because the project that I was talking about earlier, where Tabitha was helping me research, it was about how we can better support our ELL students at Tri-County because currently we don't have an ELL tutoring or support staff. So that is very much something that we are trying to focus on as an institution, but particularly in tutoring and the Learning Commons. We're starting to, I'm developing a training right now actually for tutor training because through the College Reading and Learning Association, we have to have these trainings to keep our certification and supporting ELLs is one of the endorsed topics. So I'm currently actually creating a training to help the tutors understand some really basic techniques on working with our ELLs. Things like staying away from metaphors and idioms and just tips like that to implement into our tutoring sessions. But as an institution and at large, that's something that we're definitely looking into more. So that's very in progress endeavor.
A great suggestion here from Tracy Connor for Linnea. Can you make any connections directly with the tutors, even just informally, or saying, hey, do you have a lot of students coming in with that paper from Professor Smith? Here's how I finally figured out how to find an article that meets his requirements. We used to have your setup and found this beneficial. That's a great idea.
And then Miriam says that I like the idea of cross-training between the departments. We have a writing center in our LC, and we collaborate each year by putting on a writing and research rescue workshop, but sometimes it's hard to get students to attend. Very true, very true. We also, whenever we attended the SEC LCA conference, one of the student support staff, she was thinking about maybe inviting librarians to come into tutor training, because that is one thing that we've done in our trainings before, is invited librarians into tutor training to talk about research techniques and stuff like that, so that we're kind of all on the same page, because writing tutors, they do talk with the students about research as well. Like Tabitha mentioned earlier in the presentation, the writing process and research process really go hand in hand. So having librarians and writing tutors on the same page about that is really beneficial too.
Another thing I'd like to add to that before we address our next question is it's really important to leverage any relationships you have with the instructors, if at all possible. If you're struggling to get students into the space, into a lesson, if you can get a teacher to say they need to go, that's a big help. If you can get a teacher to give them any kind of credit or some kind of co-curricular assignment for them to have a purpose to come into our space, that's a great one. So like the college skills campus engagement class, they have to go out and meet and seek help with some kind of service point. That at least gets their foot in the door. And if we can get their foot in the door, we can hopefully make a deeper connection with them. So sometimes we'll partner with instructors who will bring their class to us during class time. Sometimes we'll go to the class, and sometimes we'll just have them send out a, hey, I want you to go check out this thing. If we can get them to promote it, it can be a really big help.
So another from Linnea, that Tracy's comment leads to another question that she thinks about a lot. So how do we distinguish services from writing services if we're both helping students find articles for Professor Smith? How do students know where to go? And then Miriam said that as a librarian, we get asked to read student papers and you always feel awkward. I totally understand that as well. And I think that this is where the in-person referral system might come into play, or some kind of established referral system, just in general, of being able, maybe you're that first point of contact for the student, whether that is a tutor or whether that is a librarian. And then you get to have the opportunity to, talk with them about whatever their need is, and then refer them out to the next person.
In an environment where you guys aren't in the same space, it's kind of one of those things that we might have all been told this as an idealist thing when we were in our grad program, but it is a really good point of don't just say, I can't help you, I'm sorry, always connecting them to the next place. So yeah, it's kind of awkward if we don't have time, or we don't want to, or we aren't equipped to read through the papers the way perhaps the writing tutors will. So know who on your campus can help with that, and have a way to connect the student with that person or with that department or with that team, so that you are transferring them somewhere instead of letting them go and hoping they figure it out on their own. There was another great note from, let me scroll back up. Tracy says that she's just happy if they go somewhere. I think over time, if you start referring and the tutors are aware of that and start introducing the kinds of questions you work with, the tutors can start referring back. It all starts with relationships, though. Absolutely. That's something we've been cultivating here too. When I came in, one of my missions was to try and get to know as many of for example, the English faculty and staff as I could, because I knew that I'd be really heavily involved with them. So I wanted to be kind of that annoying little presence. It's like, hey, I'm here. How can I help? So they know my face, they know my name, and that gets us started. If one person lets me into their classroom and we have a pleasant experience and word of mouth spreads, it'll often get us into other classrooms or get them here into our space as well. Tim Brown asks, any sense as to whether students coming to your learning community for the first time are likelier to go to the research center, the writing center, or the research center? If you recognize a preference, do you have any possible explanations? Fun thing about us is we've got the library side on one half and the tutoring side on the other half. And there is an information desk smack in the middle when you come out of the elevator or you come up the stairs, where there are wonderfully helpful people who are going to point you where you need to go. And if they are just going straight to one or the other, they're going to walk there with their own intention in mind. If they stop there, our gals usually explain, if you need this kind of service, you can go over here. If you need this kind of service, you can go to that. I think often there is like a beeline. I would say a beeline to tutoring, because that's the thing that gets promoted a lot. Like, hey, if you need help, go to an SI session, go to a tutoring session, meet with them. Even if it isn't always clear, what their intention is when they send them here, if there's mix-ups in that kind of network, they get here and then the tutor will either bring them over to the library folks. The tutors are really good about also doing whatever research, kind of exploratory help they can on their end, and then doing that in-person referral to bring them over to us if that's appropriate. And likewise, so if in an instance where we get asked, can I read their paper? I'm like, hey, let's walk across the hall here, and a tutor is going to be able to help you out with that. Hannah, do you have anything you want to add?
If we were looking at just pure numbers as well, of course, we have lots of tutoring appointments during the course of the semester. And if you were looking at numbers, there are more tutoring appointments for writing than there are research consultations. But again, we do try to just refer to each other if we see that students have those additional needs. And then we do see that Lisa says, I found in the past that it is important in the onboarding process to draw clear lines of responsibility. Librarians do this, tutors do that. It allows us to reinforce one another's expertise and help guide the students as they seek help. And that is where I think that it's important for the tutors and librarians to have those first meetings. And Sam, who is our director of the Learning Commons, put something in the chat box. One of the ongoing advantages to the Learning Commons model at TCTC is that wherever that first point of contact occurs for students, staff, or faculty, we can bring them intentionally into our broader community of support. For instance, nursing faculty reaching out for content support would not only be linked to a dedicated nursing tutor, but would be introduced to research instruction and our learning strategists, as well as other asynchronous supports for their students. So yes, we provide a robust amount of different services for students, and that first point of contact is the most important one. So
that's also something that we have to be very diligent about, because we have all these services. We have so many things that we provide, and you have the question, a little bit before about who goes where and how does that end up shaping out. A lot of people, just like it's not explicit what a learning commons is to everyone in our field, a lot of students and instructors are still figuring that out too. So they may have been used to the way a library did things, or the way a tutoring center did things. So it's been very important for us in our messaging to really promote the fact that both of those services still exist. It's just bigger, better, and it's right here all together. It's a one-stop shop. So we have to be very clear about how we promote that and make sure that everyone knows where we are and what we can do for them.
Yes. And so we really appreciate your questions. We're right at time here. So if you have more questions for us or want to chat further, please feel free to contact us. We have our email addresses and our our office phone numbers up here as well. But thank you so much for your participation and for joining our session today.
Thanks so much, guys.